All right, welcome in everybody to the Laces Out podcast with Coach Kenny Simpson. I am Kirk Simpson. We're talking all things Miami Dolphins football. Today is May 3rd, which is a very exciting date for our episode. This is post the 2021 NFL draft. So we're going to be recapping what we thought of the draft class, going pick by pick, and just kind of talking about what we think these are going to contribute in 2021 and beyond. Kenny, what did you think? What are your initial thoughts of this draft class?
Well, you have to kind of separate yourself out from a fan, because there were people I wanted us to draft. So, of course, you're disappointed when you don't draft, but you can't draft everybody, and so we got in here before and I was very vocal. We needed a running back and we didn't do that. So if you're just stuck on that one issue,
Hey, we got Jared Dokes in the 7th.
Okay. Well, we didn't get one of the three that I really, really wanted, but that's me being a fan. The reality is we got very good value at where we got picks. There are a few I disagree with, and we're always going to disagree with. I'm not quite as high on our draft as probably Mel Kiper is, but I do think there's a legit chance you walked out of this draft with 4 starters, 3 starters, and 2, if they stay healthy, who could be big time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Several guys I think could be above average in the NFL at their respective positions. I think you talked about getting good value. I would agree with that. We definitely got good value. There's always going to be some disappointments in a draft. I'm usually disappointed that we don't take enough offensive linemen. But the thing about this is you also have still some free agency left to go, right? You're going to have people getting cut. You're going to have trades play out. So some of those positions that you think maybe are a must-have in the draft, well, maybe if the board doesn't fall your way, you just decide to defer and address that later on. I think it's important to point out that the consensus on this draft class is very high. I don't know if you've read the CBS reports, Mel Kiper. A lot of people are giving this draft class an A for the Dolphins. But again, it's foolish. This is, 4 days after the draft. So talk to me in 3 years, and then we'll go back and regrade it. But starting things off, we kind of mocked up our first picks in the last episode. And Kenny, you were right on the money here, so you get credit for that. We took Jaylen Waddle at number 6. I'll let you give your thoughts before I give my take, but I think we're both going to be pretty happy about this one.
Yeah, both the first-round picks, but I'll stick with Waddle on this one. High risk, high reward, but that also means it's a risk, and so you understand with Jaylen Waddle. However, the risk is, the guy had an ankle injury. It's not like he had, major back surgery or something that really,
or a hammy or a knee for a quick twitch, fast receiver.
He's pretty durable. And what I really like about Jaylen Waddle is the guy knew he was going to be a high-round pick, and he tried to go out there on one leg in the national title game. And it was clear he would have been out there, but he wanted to. So I think team-first player, well-spoken young man, and he can run.
And you talk about the guy that went ahead of him, Ja'Marr Chase. He opted out in 2020. So you talk about Jaylen Waddle coming back trying to play in the national championship game. There you go.
And I'm on record, so you can go back and look. I thought Waddle was the best receiver in the draft before the Dolphins took him for Tua. I didn't say he was the best draft. I said he was the best receiver for Tua because Tua needs a separator, and I think he does that a lot better than Pitts, and he does that a lot better than Chase does. And so to me, you took the best fast twitch receiver available with the highest ceiling. Now, could he flame out? Of course, the receivers is 50-50. But if you hit on him, you're dealing with a game breaker, a legit alpha number 1 receiver, that I think can be a game breaker for us. So I was thrilled, especially with how the draft board fell. I was kind of hoping Pitts and those guys would go because you'd got me to the point where if we'd taken Sewell, I'd have been okay. But I really wanted Waddle because I think he's, a good tackle is great for a quarterback, but a safety blanket, you can throw a bubble screen and it goes 60. Those guys are great for quarterbacks.
Sure, and it all plays into each other. Like you kind of alluded to, the Dolphins have confirmed that they had Jaylen Waddle as their highest wide receiver on the board. I don't know how much I believe that of Ja'Marr Chase, but who knows? Jaylen Waddle, I was a big fan of his. I'm definitely happy with the pick. I like him over Devontae Smith. I wouldn't have put him over Ja'Marr Chase, but we didn't have that chance. So who knows? One thing I think that is important to point out with Jaylen Waddle, he came from that famous 4 at Alabama with Devontae Smith, Jaylen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. He was consistently, all of those guys said that Jaylen Waddle was the best receiver that they played with at Alabama. And Tua has pointed to that as well. So Definitely a lot of upside. I'm just going to read something that I don't think a lot of fans are familiar with if you don't look at kind of the game-by-game stats with Jaylen Waddle. And this is something that stood out to me when I was just looking into this pick after we made it. Again, it's easy to get excited about a guy after you make the pick and convince yourself that he's going to be a star, but I think this is important. So DeVonta Smith obviously had the Heisman Trophy, maybe greatest of all time season by a receiver on that Alabama offense last year. DeVonta Smith, of course, made a famous comment saying that he wouldn't have won the Heisman if Jaylen Waddle stayed healthy, and Jaylen said, "Hey, quit that." So they get along pretty well. But prior to Jaylen Waddle going down, here are his stats by game in 2020. So you had the game at Missouri. He had 8 receptions, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. You had the next game at home against Texas A&M, a top 5 team, 5 catches, 142 yards, 1 touchdown. You had the game at Ole Miss, the closest game Alabama played last year. He had 6 receptions, 120 yards, no touchdowns that game. Very next game, you had Georgia, 6 catches, 161 yards, 1 touchdown. Now, obviously, he wasn't as big a contributor as he would have liked to be in the national championship game. It was obvious that he was hampered in that game. But he has 120 yards in each of those games that he played, alongside playing with DeVonta Smith and with all of the talent that Alabama is loaded with. So I think that that pretty much tells the story for hopefully what we can expect to see. You see, comparisons about him with like a Tyreek Hill. I don't know that that's potential with our offense. You have a lot of great play callers in Kansas City and a lot of other talent, and you also have a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes. But I think he's that game breaker potential. So we'll see how it plays out. Or any what's that?
I was going to say one last thing to kind of bring up about this. So if you're a Dolphin fan, would you have rather had Kyle Pitts or would you rather had Jaylen Waddle, which probably the guys were going back and forth. Now let me phrase it to you this way. Would you rather have had Jaylen Waddle with an extra first-round pick or Kyle Pitts? That's a no-brainer in my mind. So you're Miami, you get the guy that I would have wanted anyway, and you got an extra first-round pick. That's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely worth pointing out the way we were able to position ourselves and come out of here with some additional capital. I think he's going to be great. Receivers, first year, who knows what's going to happen, but I think beyond that, he has a very bright future in Miami.
Right.
Now, moving right along to the pick number 18, I think you're going to disagree with this one. I see the direction they went with this. It probably wouldn't have been my pick. Of course, I wouldn't have gone with Najee Harris like I think that you definitely wanted us to. Jalen Phillips, a very interesting pick, a guy who was consensus the top edge rusher in the draft, had some very serious concussion issues when he started his career at UCLA, was medically retired for a little while, came to Miami, revitalized his career, was uber productive for a guy that was the #1 overall recruit coming out of high school in his recruiting class. And I think a lot of guys say, yeah, if you can keep him healthy, he is the best edge prospect in this draft. Kenny, what do you think of that pick?
Yeah, you just said all the ifs and ifs and ifs, and then you said concussion. So I grade this as to me, this is not a pick you make in the first round. This guy more than likely, was he the best edge rusher in a very weak edge rushing draft? Yes. So I understand why you go for him because in this draft, he's the top 10 pick.
And Miami needs an edge rusher.
If. That's a huge if. It's not a ankle if or a knee if or a shoulder if it's a concussion if. One hit and that guy might be done. And you have a position of need with a guy who I felt could be as dominant, the #1 running back sitting on the board. I know we're going to disagree on this, but you bring in Najee Harris, you put him with Jaylen Waddle, and now you've given Tua 2 safety blankets. Instead a running game that averaged 1.8 yards per carry, and we spent a 7th-round pick and drafted a tackle. That's not going to change our running game. It's not. I hate to be ugly. You're now putting a lot on Tua, hoping that Fuller and now Jaylen Waddle can take over the fact that everyone in the NFL knows we can't run the ball. And that's the way it's going to be. So I was very upset with the way that went. Am I upset at the pick? No. I think that this kid, if he becomes a great edge rusher, that's great value. It just is a very high risk. And we said on the episode before, I'm okay with taking high risk, high reward. I just felt like if you're going to do that, I prefer it to be guys like running backs, receivers, edge rushers are in that ballpark, and he may be great. I think he is great. But he better be Jason Taylor if we're going to be passing on who I think Najee Harris is going to become.
Well, I mean, I think you kind of pointed to most of the major things there. There's a lot of ifs with concussions. If he gets another one, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's done for his career. Concussions are nothing to play around with. We've seen that obviously become the major story within the NFL over the last decade. That said, I think a lot of people have pointed out that the Dolphins in the first day seem to go high ceiling, and on the second and third day seem to go high floor. So seem to be a change of philosophy there. I think maybe that might be a good philosophy to take. You try and get your game changers on the first day, and then you play it safe a little bit later down when there's still some depth left in the draft. You talked about, drafting the offensive line and, wide receivers and that not improving the running game. I would disagree with you there. I saw some other analysts kind of come out with the point that, hey, our running game suffered last year, but we also had no weapons. We had a weak offensive line. I think that if you have a strong offensive line and you have a strong passing game, well, some of those guys that are hanging out in the box now have to get back quicker. And maybe it does open up a lot more for the running game. I don't think Gaskin, like you pointed out, I think he's a great back. I don't think he's a bell cow. I think we do need a bell cow. We'll see if we're able to find some other pieces to maybe add, maybe find that guy later on in free agency. But I think the three-headed back right now with Malcolm Brown, Myles Gaskin, and Samel Ahmed. It's interesting. There's not one guy there that makes you scared. So
no, that's the worst running back core in the NFL, if we're being honest. And I love those guys. I'm a fan. I'm gonna cheer for them and probably scream and holler when they score. That's the worst running. That might be worse than some college running back teams. I promise you, Alabama's running back room looks.
Yeah, probably beefier. They at least definitely have a number one guy. Yeah, but I think we've kind of talked about this one. One of the reasons I was comfortable with this pick was thinking, okay, well, you have a high pick in round 2. You can get your running back there. Things didn't pan out. We had Denver make what I thought was a very head-scratching trade up to jump right in front of us and take Javonte Williams, who was the guy that I was hoping we would get. Obviously, they jumped in front of us because they probably thought we were going to take him. I don't really think that's a need for Denver. I don't see really why they were doing it. I don't think their draft class was really great in the first place, but clearly they liked him, so they traded up and got him. Next pick, we got Javon Holland, the safety out of Oregon. Very versatile player. I went and watched his highlights. I've watched all these YouTube clips now. Now, of course, you're watching highlights, so you're watching all the good plays they made and thinking that they do that every play. But I really like him. I think he's a high floor safety. He's dynamic. Brian Flores seems to kind of like switching guys in and out. You can bump some guys now that maybe shouldn't have been out on the field last year if you feel comfortable putting him out there year one. What do you think of Javon Holland?
And this is another one we're probably going to disagree a little bit. I don't have a problem with the kid. I have no idea if he's a better safety than the kid from TCU or somebody else. And I do think he's going to provide value and maybe be able to get on the field early because I do think probably nickel corner, free safety, Bobby McCain, you better have your head on a swivel because this guy is probably the guy who's replacing you is the way I look at it. I don't think that we needed a safety at this spot. We spent a third-round pick on one last year.
I agree with you there.
I like Bobby McCain. I like Eric Rowe. I think we have 3 safeties there that are very developmental kids. Probably could have taken this later on. Probably could have picked a lineman we maybe even had rated higher on the board right here. I felt like this was a panic pick of, oh, man, they just took the running back we wanted. Who's the next highest guy on our board? Let's grab that guy. And nothing wrong with going best player available, but you're going to have 2 of our top 5 picks we're about to get into that aren't going to touch the field, and it's no fault of their own. We drafted 2 guys that I don't know where you get them minutes. I mean, like if you were, had 6 great point guards and you drafted a 7th. At some point, too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. So unless this kid can play nickel, or we plan on cutting Bobby McCain or one of those guys back at safety, this pick makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying when the pick was made. I wanted an offensive lineman here. I liked the player a lot. I just didn't really see the positional need to invest one of your higher draft picks in this pick. Like I've pointed to, I think he's a high floor player. I think there's almost no chance that he's really terrible and doesn't get any minutes. That said, yes, I did want an offensive lineman here. I was head scratching a little bit over picking a safety here. I was saying Flores is just obsessed with the defense, and he's never going to address any of the other holes on offense. But they addressed him a little bit later on, so we'll get to that. But I do think he's a good player. I think this might have been a cap move, similar to you alluded to the tight end that we picked. I don't think this is necessarily a big need, but it's maybe trying to look 2-3 seasons out when some of your guys on rookie contracts come up for contracts. If you can't retain them, if they want too much money, and you don't want to tie too much cap space up keeping those guys, then, well, maybe you draft their replacement this year, let them redshirt, and see what they can do in 2022.
Which, again, I don't make everything doesn't need to always be about Tua, but it lets you think that Deshaun Watson is still definitely on the horizon for Miami. If you have taken on a huge quarterback contract, you got to trim the fat somewhere. And now you've taken two. We're not going to get to the tight end yet. We will later. You've taken two guys that basically you're assuming you're going to cut a high-priced player. Well, that money's going somewhere, and that would kind of lead you to think that might be a possibility.
Well, I certainly hope it's not Deshaun Watson given the situation right now. We'll see how it plays out. But I think you stay very far away from that for the time being until the dust settles quite a bit. But it might not be Deshaun Watson. It could be any number of other high-profile quarterbacks that you think you can make a run at. Shocked everybody that Aaron Rodgers all of a sudden does not want to be in Green Bay. I don't blame him with the way Green Bay has treated him the last 2 years. For a guy that has been your franchise and made you consistently successful and won you a Super Bowl, by the way. But yeah, you never know who's going to hit the quarterback market next year, and cap flexibility is never a bad thing. So maybe that's where they're positioning themselves.
Last thing on this too is I think this pick actually ended up costing us a third-round pick because we had to move up in the second round to get that lineman.
Yes.
You know, the lineman here, you get the safety at 50 and don't have to move. So it ended up costing us a third-round pick.
And in the second round, I was particularly panicked about a run on offensive linemen, which is why I think you saw us trade up, which is why you use your high second-round pick on a lineman, then you don't have to worry about that. So I think we're in alignment there. But, yeah, you alluded to it. The next pick, we traded a third-round pick next year to move up a few spots and grab Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Watched some tape on him today. Really liked what I saw. I think he is probably a right tackle in the NFL. Allows you to kick Hunt and Kinley to guard. We still don't have a center. Don't know what we're doing there.
I like Dieter.
But I do think he's solid. He definitely has some work to do. You saw us take Austin Jackson last year, a little bit more of a project. He has a tendency to punch with two hands. You can't do that in the NFL. Guys are just too strong. So we'll see how he develops. But I really liked what I saw when I was watching film with him today.
Yeah, this was probably the best pick we made as far as a guy that is going to be ready to play in the NFL day one. You know, it's going to probably take a little time to develop. I think he's going to be out there pretty quick, but receivers take a little time. That's just kind of how it goes. You got a defensive pass rusher. You know those guys take time. Then we pick safety. Those guys take time. This is the most pro-ready guy we probably took. I think he starts. I don't know if it's right tackle. It's right tackle, right guard probably, but he starts at one of those two things day one. I don't make him earn it because that's kind of the Flores way. But week one, he's out there, I think.
I would agree there. And I think that Ian Book, the quarterback that he played with at Notre Dame, is very similar to Tua Tagovailoa. When I was watching film today, Ian Book, not a mobile guy that's going to break a 60-yard run, but a guy that definitely likes to move around in the pocket, find the open spots and set his eyes downfield and then find the open guy and make an accurate throw. So he's used to playing with a similar quarterback, which excites me a little bit at least. And I know Notre Dame plays a pretty NFL similar type of offense, so hopefully he's pretty well coached up and ready to jump right in.
I'm sorry, the only drawback on this we just talked about, though, was we third-round pick because we kind of messed up the order of how we drafted. And for all the great things Greer has done, I don't want to just sit here and be a critic of the man. He's done. I mean, the fact that you had highway robbery with the Houston Texans, you get a little bit of leeway in my book because you did a great job there. But I felt like the second round, really starting with an 18th pick, so really the first round into the second round, we got players, but I think we kind of mishandled how we did that.
Yeah, and you could have used 18 on Christian Darrisaw if you liked him as a tackle. Again, we don't know where they had these guys graded, so we don't know. The way that they've talked about it, and NFL execs always talk about it like this. We got 4 guys that we had graded in the first round. Sure, I mean, if you say so.
I can give him that. If you think this was the number one safety, if you thought the tackle was in the top 3 tackles, which is legitimate, you probably had him going in the 30s. If you had, obviously the 2 guys we picked in the first round, you picked. I think it's legitimate to say Miami had all 4 of these guys in their top 32. That might have been 32, 31, and then whatever else. But I do think it is naive to act like we didn't miss on a running back. I think there were a lot of chances there.
Well, and the front office is never going to admit that. Obviously, they're going to be so excited about the guys they got. This is the best draft class ever, and we're going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Right.
Rah, 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 all of that. But there were rumors that Brian Flores loved Javon Holland at the Senior Bowl,
He did.
for what it's worth. So a lot of these guys, I think you're going to see that Senior Bowl theme kind of emerge. There's some undrafted free agents that he saw at the Senior Bowl that apparently he really, really liked. So hopefully, just because he likes them means that they'll actually pan out. Doesn't necessarily mean that, but we'll see. The next one is the real head scratcher. This is the one I think everybody was kind of going, what? Hunter Long, the tight end out of Boston College in the 3rd round. We talked about this a little bit with Javon Holland. Maybe this is a cap move. You have Mike Gesicki up for an extension after this year, as well as Durham Smythe. So you do have 2 tight ends that you either have to re-sign or kick to the curb. Skill set, I think he is similar to Mike Gesicki. He's not a polished blocker yet, but he probably has more potential to develop into a better blocker than Mike Gesicki in the long run. A high production guy, who can get open. He had the most receptions, I think, of any tight end in 2021 up through, I think, week 6. So high production guy. I think he can contribute. Tight ends are notorious for taking at least 1 year to develop. Head scratcher. What do you think?
Yeah, again, it looks like a best player available type move by Miami. Now, we did, there were some pretty good running backs still on the board. Now, there were 3 great ones, and then it was a big drop. But you had guys like Trey Sermon, I think, was still available at that point. You had some pretty good running backs that were sitting there that they come in and they're your day 1 starter. We take a guy that we pretty much tell the entire NFL, we're not signing Mike Gesicki. And that's the only way you look at this. We also have, you didn't even mention Shaheen. Is it Adam Shaheen?
Yeah.
So this guy's your 4th tight end. I mean, even if he is above expectations, he's your 4th tight end this year. So he's very likely going to be a guy you keep on the roster so no one can poach him. But you don't draft this guy unless you're getting rid of a high-price free agent tight end. So, to me, kind of looking at writing on the wall, again, I'm looking between a lot of things. No one has told me this, but you look at Gesicki and Fitzpatrick, great chemistry. Gesicki and Tua, not so much. So I think this could be a move there where he needs guys that are going to create a little more separation. This is a more complete tight end. That's a huge if. I don't like getting rid of guys that could be Pro Bowl players like Gesicki, and it seems as though we are kind of leaning that direction. If that's not the case, then why did we draft this guy?
Well, Kenny, that's actually a benefit, I think. If you draft this guy, tight ends, like I talked about, are notorious. They need at least 1 year. Mike Gesicki did nothing at all his first year. Even really, really great guys like George Kittle and Travis Kelce didn't do anything their rookie year really of note. But I think it's a benefit to you and an asset to have this guy in the weights. You can let him practice for a year and see what you see at practice, see if you like him. You can also see how Mike Gesicki pans out. If he has a total breakthrough next year and Mike Gesicki is a 900 yard tight end with 10 plus touchdowns, then you go, okay, we got to re-sign this guy. I mean, it's going to be a big price tag, but he's a Pro Bowler. If he reverts, maybe you can get him a little bit cheaper. If he breaks out and you don't have the cap space because you have other needs and you sign other free agents, well, then you don't feel quite as bad letting him walk. So we'll see. I don't think it's worth a 3rd round pick, but
to me, if you're gonna do that, I've not watched as much film. I don't think I've watched a little bit, not a ton of film on this guy. I think you go for a much more high ceiling tight end. Like this guy is your traditional tight end. He's going to be solid. He's going to be that kind of guy that, hey, if he is the best you would imagine, he's going to be an average NFL tight end. So to me, I'm looking for that freak that can play tight end if I'm going to give him a year. I don't see this guy as that. I see him as like a little better version possibly of Durham Smythe or Adam Shaheen, kind of in that vein, where that's a 3rd round pick you just spent on a guy and that's his ceiling.
Yeah, and is a third round pick worth that flexibility? I think we would both probably agree not, but it is a nice thing to have. Maybe you let Smythe walk, and then you have this guy who's on a rookie deal, and it gives you more money to sign and commit to Mike Gesicki. We'll see how it plays out. Now, again, this is where we didn't have a lot of picks, the meat of the draft, moving past the third round at nothing. We, I think, traded our fifth this year for Pittsburgh's fourth next year. I like that move. I like stockpiling picks, and especially in the fourth round where you can still get some good talent. I like it, but it would have been nice, more exciting to get more picks. We signed Larnell Coleman, the tackle out of UMass, actually in the seventh round. I don't know a whole lot about this guy. I've read some opinions about him that he was a guy that, is obviously huge and could develop, but he's definitely going to be a project. You're getting a tackle in the seventh round, but O-line depth is never a bad thing.
Yeah, no, those are great picks. The kid's like 6'5", 300 pounds. I think he ran close to a 5 flat 40. I mean, the guy can play a little bit, and he's definitely very athletic. I mean, he's clearly a guy that's more than likely going to be a practice squad or maybe be a backup early. But those are the guys that. So I'm with you. I think first round you go high ceiling. Seventh round you go complete gamble. And this is where you're putting every chip you have on red 24, whatever it is, and shoot for it, because if it hits, and that's pretty good. And I do like the fact that we're taking multiple guys at tackle, because I think the guy we drafted from Notre Dame, I'm trying to remember the last. I don't know. Eckenberg, he may have to kick to guard. And if you do that, then you're going to need a more athletic tackle.
Yeah, and in today's NFL, you are 100% guaranteed to have injuries along your offensive line at some point in the season. Whether they're season ending, whether they're out a few weeks, you are definitely going to have some injuries at some point. In some cases, you may have many injuries, and you may be playing third string guys as your starting tackle out there trying to protect your quarterback. So I have no problem with it. We'll see how he pans out. He's got all the physical tools. We'll see if he can develop. It all comes down to coaching. So do you trust our offensive line coach to develop him? Remains to be seen. I hope so. Now, you wanted a running back. Here's your stinking running back in the seventh round. Jared Dokes, the running back from Cincinnati. Bowling ball type builds. I think he's under 6 foot and around I don't want to say a number.
Almost 230. He's about 230.
Yeah. So bowling ball type is definitely a bruiser. Maybe put him in goal line sets. You said make a gamble. Here you go.
Well, to me, I feel like Greer walked up there and flipped every Dolphin fan the bird with this pick. Like, I really feel like that's why
he's your freaking running back.
That's exactly what the mindset. You want a running back? We'll get you a dang running back. And then, hey, who we got on the board? Just pick that guy. Even this guy may be great. I don't mean to. If you're in the NFL and you get drafted, you are a great athlete. I don't care who you are. That's a good job for this kid. Hope he makes the team. He's going to
have opportunity.
Because you're on the worst running back core in the NFL. You're not making a team. And hopefully he's a good one. I do think he will complement. I don't want to come across that I don't like Gaskin. I really do like that guy. And if you can bring a thumper in to pair with him, you might have something that can at least be average. And this guy maybe can fulfill that role. To me, he's just one of those seventh round picks that he's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's a seventh round pick. Frankly, some of your undrafted free agents are more likely to make the team than seventh round picks. So, like we talked about, though, he'll have opportunity. If he shows flashes, if he is better than his draft status shows, he's going to have a chance to get some carries. So we'll see how it pans out. Moving along to undrafted free agents, there's really only one that I'm familiar with, so that's what I'm going to start with. The offensive tackle out of Middle Tennessee State, Robert Jones. Again, another guy Brian Flores supposedly loved at the Senior Bowl. Apparently, the rumors are that we loved him so much, we offered, I think, $150,000 guaranteed in his contract, which is apparently very big for an undrafted free agent. I don't really know what the salary breakdowns are on those. So if they say so, I guess. But watching tape on him, he looks I would say he looks almost as good as any lineman prospects that we drafted this year. Right. So I'm surprised to see him go undrafted, and I think we're excited for him. So, Kenny, have you had a chance to look into him at all, Robert Jones?
Not a ton, no, but I love the idea. Again, you got two super athletic kids, a kid out of UMass this kid out of Middle Tennessee State. My bet is the reason they're not highly drafted is they played at Middle Tennessee State and UMass. If they had played at Georgia or wherever else, this guy's getting picked probably in the 3rd round. So to me, great, because like you mentioned, you can never have enough linemen in today's NFL. You just can't. And then so if this guy's a great athlete, can take a spot, that'd be awesome. Again, just I don't know all the exact financials, but usually undrafted free agents, you guarantee them very little because there's a good chance they're going to get cut. So 150 makes you think that Miami thinks there's a good chance he makes the team. Whether that's a credit to him or an indictment to our offensive line room remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's just something to differentiate yourself when, these undrafted free agents have become sort of a free agency in their own right, where teams get into bidding wars over the highest profile one. So it's good to see that we liked one and identified him, went out and said, hey, we're going to commit to you and we want to get you on board. So I'm hopeful for him. Big offensive line guy. So I really hope that he pans out and we see him on the field at some point this year. Now, the other undrafted free agents, I'm going to be frank, I don't know anything about them. We did sign a defensive tackle out of Indiana, Jerome Johnson. Good to get some depth there. That's a position where we could use some extra guys. So do you have any thoughts on that?
No, these undrafted guys, I've kind of taken the approach that I'll wait till camp and kind of see which one of them starts standing out. Usually, but they do matter. I'm not trying to say they don't matter, because I think there's every team. It seems like with Miami, you're going to have 2 or 3 on the team to make the team, and some of them play pretty well. So it'd be good to watch during these camps they start doing, and then of course during the preseason, you may find 1 or 2, but usually, if a bunch of undrafted free agents are making your roster, that lets you know a little bit more about your roster than it does about the player. Yeah,
well, and if you have a good scouting department, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility to find a few gems for the undrafted free agents. So there's usually, at least like you said, 1 or 2 that actually pan out. The next 2 that we signed seem to be more special teams kind of gadget guys. A tight end and fullback out of Alabama, yet another Alabama alumni on our Miami Dolphins. Carl Tucker, he's a tight end / fullback, so sort of a
Chandler Cox kind of guy.
Yeah, that kind of mold. And then Jaylen Askew, the cornerback out of Georgia Tech. I had heard his name before, but I don't really know anything about him. So that's kind of the rundown of all of our picks. Kenny, do you have any kind of official thoughts? And then we'll wrap things up here at the end with the stupidest tradition in sports analysis, which is giving a draft class a grade 2 days after they're signed. What do you think before we dive into that?
Yeah, it's one of those deals where the draft is a whole lot like going to a casino. Like the anticipation and the buildup a lot of time is way more exciting than the actual event, and so getting draft capital has become kind of a thing. We talk about it, we mock draft, we have a lot of fun with these things. And that's fun. It's a fun thing to do. But the reality is, you can have all the draft capital you want. So I kind of look at it like we handed Chris Greer the most money in the NFL to go to the draft. We expect you to bring us back. So that's where when we get into these grades, you start seeing things. And to me, I felt for the most part, he did a great job pre-draft. He did a great job with a few of his picks. But I'm concerned he bungled up kind of that into the first round, early second round, to the point where these guys may be starters for us, but look at some of the guys that he left on the board that he could have got that would have been immediate impact players for us. So I really hope the Holland kid is as good as we think he is. I really think that Waddle's going to be a stud. I really believe that. I think Notre Dame kid is going to be a starter. I think your other 2 are what the grade will eventually – we talk about this draft 3 years from now, we're going to be talking about the edge rusher, and we're going to be talking about the safety. If both those guys are still on a contract, this was a great draft. If both those guys, unfortunately, are out, one's out of the league with injuries, and one of them can't crack the starting lineup over Bobby McCain or over Eric Rowe, not a good draft.
Yeah, and you talked about the casino analogy, and I like that. I mean, I think that the big takeaway there is that usually the house wins. I mean, you might play blackjack and get 50-50 odds at best, but quantity over quality, right? You want to play as many hands as you can because you're going to have some wins. But some of these guys are flat out going to bust. It happens every draft class. It happens with every team, even the really good drafting teams like the Ravens. Basically the name of the game here is just to get quantity and get enough picks where you can fill enough holes, have guys on rookie deals that are contributing so that you can commit your free agency money elsewhere to big positions of need or to get your stud guys, your guys that really make your team. So I like the analogy there. Again, I feel pretty good about it. Some of the consensus that I've seen coming out is very positive, but none of those guys know anything. And you and I are the biggest draft experts in the world, and we're the ones that you should trust. So if you ever want to know what you should think about the Dolphins draft class, just come watch our videos and we'll tell you exactly what you should think.
We should tell you. But I will say this, you've got basically now Greer's got 2 draft classes back to back. He's got another draft class coming up, hopefully. I mean, I'm hoping we do well if they don't fire anybody. So assuming he's still here, he's going to have a chance in this 4-year window with full first-round picks, multiple second-round picks. We're halfway through that window now. You hope he found his quarterback. Now you hope he found his receiver. You know, you're kind of starting to build these cornerstone pieces. But if he missed out on high picks, then, you know, he won't be employed very long.
Yeah, no, that's how it works in the NFL. And there are 2 sides to this equation. So you talked about getting those cornerstone kind of pieces with, you know, guys at different positions. Again, having this many players on rookie deals allows you a lot of flexibility to go into the free agency market and go get some guys that you weren't able to draft. So if you missed out on running backs, hopefully you have enough flexibility because you have guys on rookie deals to go sign a running back or whatever the position might be. So there's the 2 halves to this, and we'll see how Chris Grier is able to manage both of them. To this point, he's been very good at gaming the system for the draft, being able to stockpile picks, get high picks. The next piece is, can you cash in on those picks? And then can you go address your other holes in free agency and not strike out there? So it's a big puzzle, and we'll see how pieces fit together. But I think that's pretty much, we've beat this draft class into the ground. So let's get right to the final grade, Kenny. Again, you know how I feel about this tradition, but what do you give on the A to F scale of the Miami Dolphins 2021 draft and undrafted free agency class?
I'm going to go real quickly down them. It's kind of what I grade each pick, and then I'll tell you the overall. So Waddle I have as an A, but he is a high risk. Our defensive end, I've got him as a B simply because of the injury risk. If he was an injury risk, that's an A. If he's your only first-round draft pick, it's probably a D because that's too much of a risk. So I'm going to be nice and say a B there because he could pan out.
And again, it is a position of need. We glossed over it somewhat. We do have Ogba coming back, who had a great year last year, but you do need another edge rusher. So,
absolutely, that's why I think it's a B. I think if it's not an injury concern, this kid's an A+, but he wouldn't have been there without that. So, then you go safety. I'm going to give that a B. I do think he's a very talented player. If he comes in and starts for us, it's awesome. I do think he's probably, in our minds at least, the best safety on the board. You get a guy at 36 that you probably had a first-round grade on. Good pick. Offensive lineman, I'll give it an A. I think that was a great pick because of who it was, not how it happened, because of who it was. I think this is a guy who's going to be a 10, 12-year starter in the NFL. Tight end, you got to give that a D. I mean, I don't know how else to dress that up. This guy's ceiling is not the sixth ceiling, and you spend a 3rd-round pick on him. Then late round picks, I'd like trading 4th or 5th for a 4th. That's a good move. Had some good moves there in free agency. So overall, I'm going to say a B. You know, I think it's, like you said, it's way too early to give a grade. If you're going on potential, this is an A+ draft. If you're going on a floor where some of these guys could be hurt or be out or never crack the lineup, this could drop to a C or a D really easily. So I think a B is probably fair.
I agree. And I think actually that's a good idea maybe for another episode is let's go back to 2019 and grade that draft class.
Yeah.
Now that we have some tape on him. But yeah, I'll go ahead and do the same thing just because that's the way you broke it down. So Jaylen Waddle, I'm going to give him a B simply because I would have liked Penei Sewell a little bit better. I don't hate the pick. He's my number 2 wide receiver. He's the number 1 that was on the board at that point, and we didn't have to really maneuver to get him. We picked up some additional capital. So again, a B for that. Jalen Phillips, I'll go with you and give him a B as well. Again, he would be an A without the injury concerns that we've talked about that. Javon Holland, I'm going to differ from you here and give him an A. I think he's a high floor player. I think Brian Flores loves having these pieces he can move around, these dynamic guys that he can switch around in the secondary. Secondary is a strength, and we don't know how long all of those guys that performed so well last year are going to A, keep performing, or B, be on the team. So I think getting a pick now, giving him a year of experience before he maybe really has to contribute, I think that's an A. Eichenberg, the tackle from Notre Dame, another A. The pick of Eichenberg made me feel a lot better about the pick of Holland. When the Holland pick came out, I was a little bit scratching my head and not so sure. I liked the player, but I was like, you still haven't addressed your offensive line. When we got Eichenberg, I felt much more comfortable with the Holland pick. I'm going to give a D to Hunter Long, the tight end as well. Just not a position of need. I don't see a ton of upside there. I think he's going to be a big contributor maybe 3-4 years down the road, but we'll see. And then the late round draft picks, I don't think they're worth rating. Again, I liked the strategy like you talked about, just kind of taking flyers on guys and hoping they work out. So with all of that, I'm going to go ahead and be boring and agree with you and give this draft class a B, maybe a B plus if we're doing the plus minus thing, but we'll see how it all pans out. I do think we have maybe a good idea for another episode where we can do this when we actually have something worth talking about. So stay tuned for that, hopefully in the future. I think that just about wraps us up. Kenny, do you have any last things that you want to get to before we wrap up this episode?
No, I thought in general, I thought Miami, whatever we think, B, C, A, D, of course, every team in the draft came out with guys that filled holes. What Chris Greer did a phenomenal job of, and the Jets did a good job of it too, unfortunately, was we have a lot more guys that could potentially fill those holes because we had a lot more picks. And since he's been in Miami, he has done a really good job, probably the New England model, of just accumulating multiple draft picks. And so, like we mentioned at the beginning, these are 50-50 guys. You're going to miss, but if you take a lot more money into the casino, you get a better chance of coming out with money.
Yep, and hoping you can continue to develop those guys. Again, I've talked about as many guys on rookie deals as you can because that allows you to spend money in other places, and if guys don't pan out, you can cut them without too much pain. So with that said, I think we've gone ahead and given our entire thoughts on the 2021 draft class. This will be a lot more exciting to talk about come September when we actually have games where we can see what some of them can do. I don't think we're going to see a lot of them contributing next year, maybe to the level that we expect them to long term, but it's exciting. It's a good draft class, and excited to see we were 10-6 last year, see if we can take these pieces and build on that. So I think that's going to lead us to the end of this episode. Kenny, do you want to head us out?
Sure. For Kirk and for Kenny, laces out.
Laces out. Thanks for watching, everybody.